Letting go isn't weakness, it's not giving up, and it's definitely not about losing hope. Letting go is a declaration of self-trust. It's that bold moment when you stop chasing clarity from someone else and start living in alignment with yourself. And ironically, beautifully, that moment, that shift, that surrender, that's when everything starts to change. That's when the energy shifts. That's when the one who was distant, unsure, or inconsistent often begins to return, with more certainty, more presence, and more depth. But here's the truth, they didn't change first, you did, and that shift within you is what called them back, stronger, because when you let go, not in anger, but with peace, your energy becomes different. You're no longer sending out vibrations of need, attachment, or desperation. You're no longer signaling, I need you to complete me. Instead, you're broadcasting power, alignment, clarity, and energy like that. It draws in everything that was once repelled by your inner chaos. Letting go is not the end of the story. It's often the moment the real story begins. Here are the 6 key moments that happen when you finally let go, and how they often lead to their return in a stronger, more intentional way. Energy may have been gripping tightly to the idea of connection. You might have been reaching out subtly or overtly, replaying memories, looking for signs, constantly scanning their behavior, waiting for something to shift. You were energetically entangled, even in their absence. That kind of holding on, though often rooted in love or hope, sends out a frequency of control, fear, and need, and whether you realize it or not, the other person feels it. They may not know why they feel overwhelmed, pressured, or confused around you. It's because your energy is silently shouting, come back, choose me, make this work. But something radical happens the moment you decide to let go for you. It's not about revenge, it's not to teach them a lesson, it's not to trigger their return, it's simply the result of reaching your emotional limit, the place where your soul says enough. You don't slam the door shut. You just stop knocking, you stop texting from a place of anxiety, you stop wondering what you did wrong, you stop crafting mental scenarios in which they return with the perfect words, and when your spirit finally stops clinging, your energy shifts. That shift is powerful. It doesn't scream, it doesn't beg, it doesn't try to prove, it simply withdraws. Your emotional availability pulls back, and suddenly, without sending a single message, they notice. Not always right away, but there's an unmistakable energetic space left behind when someone stops feeding the dynamic. The constant validation you used to provide, gone. The emotional warmth they used to rely on, even from a distance. Quiet now, the attention they didn't ask for but always had, missing. This energetic space isn't a punishment, it's a recalibration. When you let go, you're no longer trying to shape outcomes, you're no longer in survival mode. You're not energetically tethered to a result. You've taken all that attention, all that longing, and started pointing it back to yourself. You're giving that emotional fuel to your own healing, your own peace, your own joy. And the more you focus inward, the more your energy becomes sovereign, grounded, calm, confident, and here's what happens when energy like that enters the room, or even the memory of you enters their room. It feels different. It's not chaotic, it's not grasping, it's not performing, it's magnetic, because you're no longer broadcasting, I need you. You're broadcasting, I've got me. And that frequency draws people in, not through force, but through presence. Through peace, they begin to feel the absence of what they once took for granted. The space you created by letting go becomes the invitation for them to reflect, to miss, to reconsider, not because you pushed, not because you waited, but because you finally released them, and in doing so, returned fully to yourself. That's what they feel. That's why they often come back stronger, not because you begged, but because you let go. Letting go gives you the emotional space to come back home to yourself, and in that space, you begin to build something powerful, emotional self-sufficiency. Before, you may have been operating from a place where your peace depended on someone else's actions. If they texted, you felt seen. If they didn't, you felt forgotten. If they showed up with affection, you felt hopeful. If they pulled away, you felt abandoned. It wasn't that you lacked strength. It was that your emotional world was wired to their presence. And the moment you let go, you begin to unhook those wires, one by one. At first, it feels unfamiliar. Your mind might still look for signs. Your heart may still long for connection. And your body may still crave the comfort of old patterns. But the difference now is awareness. You begin to catch yourself. You notice the impulse to reach out or check up, and instead you breathe, you pause, you redirect that energy inward. You ask, what do I need right now? And slowly, you begin to fill the spaces that were once occupied by their attention with your own presence. You start to meet your own needs, and not in a performative, fake it till you make it kind of way, but in an intentional, grounded, soul-honoring way. You learn how to soothe your own anxiety without needing someone else's reassurance. You create joy on your own terms instead of waiting for someone to show up and deliver it. You build routines, passions, practices that nourish your spirit, and you no longer outsource your sense of emotional stability to someone else's availability. As this inner strength grows, you begin to walk differently. You speak differently. You no longer over-explain, overcompensate, or overgive. You know that your energy is valuable. You know that your love is sacred. You don't need constant reassurance because you've become your own anchor. And ironically, this shift doesn't make you cold. It makes you radiant. It doesn't close your heart. It opens it wider, only now it's protected by boundaries, not walls. And from this place of emotional self-sufficiency, something magnetic happens. People sense it. They feel the difference between someone who's attached and someone who's aligned. You're no longer broadcasting need, you're embodying wholeness. And that wholeness is what draws others back in, often with a deeper level of respect. Because when you no longer rely on someone else to complete you, you give them the space to rise, to meet you, or to stay gone. And either way, you're okay. That's the quiet confidence of someone who has come home to themselves. Not because they wanted to win someone back, but because they realized they were never meant to abandon themselves in the first place. Emotional self-sufficiency isn't about pushing others away, it's about no longer pushing yourself aside. And when you reclaim that, everything around you begins to change, including how others show up. When you finally let go, something extraordinary happens. You stop living for the what if and start thriving in the what is. Letting go breaks the cycle of mental time travel, where your mind constantly spins in future fantasies or past regrets. No more asking, what if he realizes, or what if I'd done something differently? You stop trying to rewrite a story that already unfolded. You step out of the waiting room of your life, and in that moment you don't just get your time back. You get your power back. That power shows up in how you live, not perform live. You begin to do things for the joy of it, not because you hope they'll notice. You take care of yourself because it feels good, not because you want someone else to see what they lost. You dress in a way that reflects who you're becoming. You go out, reconnect with friends, explore passions you put on hold. You're no longer just existing in limbo, silently hoping for someone to return. You're actively creating a life that's rich, present, and full of you. This kind of living isn't loud. It's not curated for attention. It's deeply real, and because it's real, it creates a different kind of energy. One that's centered in joy, not desperation. When you start building a life you love, your frequency rises. You stop chasing closure. You stop watching their every move. You stop needing their return to validate your worth. You realize that your healing was never meant to be held hostage by someone else's choices. And here's the shift. When you stop waiting, you stop leaking energy. All the overthinking, the analyzing, the hoping that used to drain you, now you redirect it into your body, into your creativity, into your dreams. You go from feeling empty to feeling energized because you're no longer stuck in emotional debt. You're investing in yourself, and you're not doing it for anyone to see. You're doing it because you finally believe you're worth that kind of love. Your own. What often happens next is what seems like irony, but is actually alignment. The person you let go of starts to feel the change. They sense the absence, not of your presence, but of your energy. They notice you've stopped orbiting their life, that you're no longer silently holding space for their return. That you've moved, and in that movement they begin to shift too, sometimes slowly, sometimes with urgency, but almost always it's when you stop waiting for them to come back that they begin to see you clearly and want to come back stronger. But by then, your life is already moving forward with or without them, and you've realized you were always the one you were waiting for. When you let go, you stop seeing the situation through emotional fog, and clarity begins to take root. It's like lifting a veil. You start to see what really happened, not just what you wanted to believe. While you were caught in the cycle of hoping, clinging, and second guessing, your judgment was clouded by attachment. You may have overlooked red flags, minimized your needs, or told yourself stories to avoid the discomfort of reality. But once you release the grip, you begin to see things through a cleaner lens, not bitter, not angry, just clear. That clarity becomes a superpower. You realize how often you were showing up from a place of fear. Fear of being alone, fear of losing potential, fear of missing out on something that felt familiar. You begin to see the difference between connection and chemistry, between consistency and crumbs. You understand the weight you were carrying that wasn't yours to hold. You were trying to fix what you didn't break, hold together what wasn't aligned, and prove your worth in a situation that should have honored it from the beginning. And with that clarity, you make new choices, not out of reaction, but from self-respect. You become less available to people who drain your energy. You don't entertain confusion anymore. You no longer give the benefit of the doubt when patterns have shown you the truth. You start to ask better questions. Does this align with who I am now? Does this support my peace? You realize that emotional safety isn't optional. It's required, and you stop shrinking yourself to keep someone comfortable. This shift changes how you carry yourself. You're no longer desperate for attention because your self-worth is no longer outsourced. You don't chase understanding. You stand in it. You stop needing closure because you've already given yourself the final word. And with this clarity, something powerful happens. Your energy sharpens. You feel lighter, stronger, more grounded, and that energetic upgrade, people feel it, even the ones who once took you for granted. They may return, yes, but now you see the difference. You see whether they've changed or whether they're just responding to the fact that you finally did. You no longer jump back in because someone showed up. You pause, you observe, you discern. You're not coming from a place of emotional hunger. You're coming from fullness, from vision, from alignment. Letting go gave you space, but clarity gave you wisdom. And now that you see clearly, your path forward will never again be based on confusion, fear, or emotional need, but on truth. And that truth, it sets you free. When you let go, your silence becomes the loudest thing they hear. It's not angry, not cold, it's grounded. It's the sound of someone who's no longer explaining themselves. Someone who has stopped proving their worth to someone who never really saw it clearly. You stop sending long texts. You stop defending your feelings. You stop responding to half-effort messages. Not because you don't care, but because you've finally realized that your energy is sacred and not everyone deserves access to it. Your silence isn't a punishment, it's a boundary, a declaration that says, I'm not available for this version of the story anymore. In the past, maybe your instinct was to fix things, to initiate the conversation, smooth the tension, make things better even when it wasn't your responsibility. You may have filled in the gaps they left, trying to keep something alive that wasn't being nurtured equally. But now you understand that real love doesn't require you to overextend, and when you finally let go, you pull back all the effort you were once pouring into a one-sided dynamic. You stop chasing. You stop rescuing, and in that space something powerful shifts, not just in them, but in you. Silence is powerful because it's rooted in peace, not pride. It's a sign you've outgrown emotional chaos. You no longer feed drama with reaction. You no longer need to be heard by someone who never really listened. Your silence says everything. I've done my part. I've said enough. Now I'm choosing me. And the impact of that hits deeper than any confrontation ever could. Because your absence now carries more truth than your presence ever did in the wrong story. And as that silence settles, the other person begins to notice, not just that you're gone, but that something about you has changed. You're no longer accessible. Your energy isn't orbiting around them. They begin to feel what it's like without your consistent presence, and often they realize what they lost only when your silence replaces your availability. That's when many return, not because you chased, but because you didn't. You let go, you created space, and in that space they saw what they couldn't see before: your worth, your strength, your peace. But here's the most beautiful part. When you've truly let go, you're no longer waiting for that return. If it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, your peace remains. You've stopped living for someone else's awakening and started living from your own. And that kind of silence, it speaks of healing. It speaks of growth. It speaks of a love for yourself that no one can take away. And whether they come back or not, you've already come back to yourself. And that's the most important return of all. When you finally let go, you no longer operate from fear. You begin to move with faith. Not blind faith in someone returning or in the outcome unfolding exactly how you imagined, but a deeper, quieter faith in yourself. You stop asking, "What if I lose him forever?" and start asking, "What if I find myself fully?" That shift is where your healing begins, because fear had you holding on for dear life, trying to control every twist and turn of a story that wasn't flowing. Fear kept you anxious, always reaching, always reacting. Faith, however, grounds you. It reminds you that what's meant for you doesn't require you to abandon yourself to receive it. Faith lets you breathe again. You no longer interpret silence as rejection. You no longer see distance as a threat. You don't take every delay as a sign that something's wrong. Instead, you start to believe deeply that if something is meant to find its way back to you, it will. And if it doesn't, it was simply a part of your becoming, not your forever. Faith softens the grip of control. You stop trying to force timelines or decode mixed signals. You begin to let life unfold with trust, knowing you're guided, even in the uncertainty. In this space of surrender, you become more powerful than ever. You're no longer chasing love. You are love. You're no longer proving your value. You embody it. You begin to attract, not pursue. And the energy you give off now is rooted in confidence, peace, and quiet certainty. It says, "I'm open to love, but I'm not desperate for it. I know what I bring, and I know that what's right for me will recognize that." This is the energy of a person who no longer fears being alone, because they've discovered how whole they already are. And what often happens when you move from fear to faith is this: the very person you let go of begins to feel it. Not in words, not in confrontation, but in vibration. They feel the shift in you. They feel the peace, the detachment, the quiet self, worth that now defines your energy, and often it makes them pause, it makes them reflect, it makes them return, not out of guilt or habit, but because they see clearly now what they couldn't see when you were clinging. They return to something stronger because you've become stronger, but here's the key: you're no longer waiting for it. You're not living with one eye on the door. Your life has expanded, your heart has healed, and your faith has replaced your fear. Whether they come back or not is no longer the story. The story now is you rising, trusting, surrendering, and leading your life from a place of deep inner knowing. Letting go didn't break you, it woke you up. And faith is what carried you home. Letting go isn't the end, it's the beginning. It's the moment you stop clinging to something that once felt like everything and instead begin reconnecting with yourself. It's a quiet but powerful decision to no longer allow your identity to be tied to someone else's presence, approval, or absence. When you truly let go, you don't lose love, you realign with it. You finally realize that holding on was never keeping you connected. In fact, it was holding you hostage in a version of life that no longer served your soul. The transformation starts subtly. You begin detaching not with anger, but with peace. You no longer chase closure because you've found it within. You don't wait for them to recognize your worth. You finally do that yourself. And it's in that internal shift, in that bold act of self-respect, that the energy begins to move. The pull that once went outward begins to pull inward. The power you gave away starts to come back home, and when it does, something incredible happens. You start to thrive. Not to prove a point, but because you deserve to. As you rise, the dynamic shifts. The person you let go of may start to feel your absence. They may sense that something in you has changed. You're no longer available for half love or mixed signals. You're not resentful. You're simply elevated. You're not playing games. You're playing for peace. And in that peace, many people finally see what they couldn't before: your depth, your loyalty, your energy, your worth. That's when they return, not just to your life, but to your power. Not because you demanded it, but because you embodied it. But here's the truth: by the time they come back, you're not in the same place they left you. You've grown, you've outgrown, you've healed, you've shed layers of doubt and fear. So when they return, you don't rush in, you reflect, you don't fall back, you stand tall. You no longer need them to choose you because you've already chosen yourself. Their return is no longer your rescue. It's a response to the strength you built when you finally let go. So if you've let go, or you're about to know this, you're not giving up, you're growing up, you're releasing the version of love that required you to abandon yourself, and whether or not they return, you've already won. Because the greatest love you'll ever receive won't come from someone who left and came back. It will come from the moment you decided not to leave yourself again. That's your power, that's your truth. And that's what will always come back stronger. Thank you so much for being here with me today. Thank you for giving your time, your energy, and your heart to this message. If you've made it this far, it means you're already on your journey of healing, growth, and powerful transformation. And I want you to know that matters, your decision to let go, to rise, to choose yourself again. It's not small, it's everything. You don't need to wait for someone else to come back to validate your worth. You are already worthy, you are already enough, and you are more powerful than you think. Whether someone comes back or not is no longer the question. What matters most is that you came back to yourself. That's where the real magic begins. If today's message resonated with you, let it sink deep into your spirit. Revisit it when you feel uncertain. Let it remind you that letting go isn't weakness, it's strength. It's self-love in motion, and it's often the first step to the life and love you truly deserve. Until we meet again, take care of your heart, guard your peace, and never forget, you are not alone on this journey. You are becoming everything you were meant to be. Thank you and goodbye for now. Keep rising. You've got this.